Welcome to Journey. This is Brenda Roberts, and for this show, we're going to talk about sustainability and the fact that there are literally thousands of groups now popping up at a very grassroots community level, looking at how to assist each other through times of crisis, as we're seeing our own country go through fires and floods and other natural disasters that are going to occur. So sustainability could be about that, but it's also, I think, about a new sense of belonging, to community. And my guests are David Wright, and he is a founder of Sustainable Ballard, and Neva, who is on Bainbridge Island, also connected with us. So both of you, I want to welcome you to Journey, and I look forward to taking this journey with you.
All right, thank you, Brenda.
I'm going to start with David and just ask, as far as the term sustainability, which may be new to some folks, what does it mean to you and your local group?
Well, sustainability is like some of those catch-all words that are being used now, like the word organic. You know, when you go to the store and you want to buy something organic, what does that really mean? You know, so we also have to ask ourselves the question, what is sustainability? You know, we have to ask ourselves, first of all, what it is that we want to sustain. The earth will get along fine with or without us, but if we want to sustain the American dream as it is, we know that is inherently unsustainable. The other thing is that sustainability, sustainable development is an oxymoron, because development by its own nature is not sustainable. So what we mean by sustainability is we want to sustain or regain a foundational relationship with the planet and with each other and natural forces. It also means a much greater sense of personal responsibility to the resources that we rely on this planet, the air, water, and the soil that we use for our plants. And of course, we can't do that without a greater sense of belonging to a wider community.
I like that idea, and I want Neva to step in and kind of say, why did you get involved with the sustainability group?
Well, it just seems like that. I mean, for me personally, that is the moral imperative. But to answer your other question about just sort of a definition of sustainability, the way we look at it here on Bainbridge is we really look at the three pillars of sustainability. I think that helps people understand it in a really integrated way, which is the social aspects, the environmental aspects, and the economic aspects. So sustainability. Clearly, I love what David said about a foundational research relationship with the planet. And in a very pragmatic way, it's also doing business locally, and what does a local living economy mean? So in terms of social and equity, and so it's as you say, sustainability can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but I think in some ways, no matter. It almost doesn't matter as long as the work we're doing is making a positive difference.
Definitely. And, I want you to start, and then also David to comment on the idea a lot of people have is that, here's another group of survivalists. You know how we went through that phase before the millennium, and, people left their jobs and went off in the woods and stocked up for, a year's worth of food and water. And I don't think sustainability is about that at all. So I'd like for you to maybe address that issue that some people may have.
Yes, I'm sorry, Brenda, was that to me you're asking?
Yes, if you start, and then I'm going to give David a chance to comment on that as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, I don't think about sustainability necessarily in a crisis modality at all. Although what is true is that people come to the sustainability movement for different reasons. I mean, some people do come, because they have deep concerns, about the quote-unquote perfect economic storm, global climate change and peak oil and just the big inequities we have in our economic systems. But I would say that there are other people that come to it, again, just a deep moral imperative, based on their love for the planet, their love for the environment. Some people come to it because they see that community building and knowing your neighbors and taking care of your neighbors is important. So really, people come to it for lots of different reasons, and everybody has something to contribute, no matter what their stand is. But it's certainly, the idea of a survivalist is much more of the lone wolf who goes out, to the, 100 acres and, takes care of themselves, and that's fine for those people. But really, in terms of a community reorganization, sustainability movements are really about community.
Well,
Exactly.
and I'm going to let David jump in on that issue as well.
Well, I want to hit upon several points that Neva made, and I think she's right on the button. The sustainability movement that we're seeing in the Puget Sound region, starting with sustainable ballot and expanding to the more than 40 sustainable communities that we now have, known as scallops, sustainable communities all over Puget Sound, just in the space of less than 4 years, or less than 2.5, I should say, is that worldwide as well as locally, we are witnessing the beginning of a paradigm shift in a spiritual approach, to how we view ourselves, our political systems, and the world in general. What we're witnessing is a big effort, by dominator societies, dominator paradigms, to stamp down freedom and nurturing aspect of communities to have a better relationship with the planet. And with respect to the survivalist mode, we are not all about survivalism as a lot of people might think might be the case. It's been true that anthropological studies the world over have shown that the survival and fitness of a tribe or a community depends more on the cumulative actions of all of the individuals working together in concert in an era of cooperation. And it doesn't survive. It doesn't depend on the actions of any one individual. So we're looking at sustainability, focusing on the importance of community rights rather than the narrowly defined individual rights, which is where the Supreme Court has ruled so often in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement. That effectively has killed the Civil Rights Movement in a big way because communities were not thought of as actual entities. So we're looking at a very organic approach to how our communities are working together and networking between each other. So we're really moving away from the American or dominator paradigm of an I or me system to a we system where we have to now think about all of ourselves working in concert and sharing and cross-pollinating ideas. So that's what this kind of sustainability is all about.
Well, and I like the idea, too, of this whole idea of cross-pollinating, because where one group has started and gone through the rigors, I would say, of developing and growing and evolving, there's obviously going to be some lessons learned along the way that if they share those with other embryo groups, it's going to help the process, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
And tell me about the process. And Neva, I'll start with you, and then give David a chance too. Now, when you first started out getting involved, what do you do? How do you get to the folks? How do you get their attention? Where do you start?
Oh, sure. Well, in terms of the founding of Sustainable Bainbridge, what we did is, it started as a kitchen table conversation with a few, hardy activist leader types in the community who could see the writing on the wall. And our strategy in order to reach people was we started putting on events for the community, but not just as a sole group of people. We started immediately to reach out to other organizations and institutions, including our local city government here on Bainbridge, to join us in sponsoring some of these events. And so that started to kind of multiply. So it gave those organizations an opportunity to reach out to their constituencies where we may not have been able to. So we started with a collaborative model right out of the gate.
Now, did you form like a 501c3, a nonprofit group? Are you officially formed?
We are in the process. And we've been together formally as a group now for about a year and a half. So that takes time, and not every single sustainability group is going to elect to go the 501c3 route. But after a lot of research and discussion, we did decide to go that route.
Well, and I understand, too, there is a benefit for companies locally to get more involved and, of course, have that tax incentive, as they fund events and participate in events and provide some necessary resources. So once again, not everyone might want to go that route, but it's probably a good one to look at. And I'll ask David what route they took.
What got Sustainable Ballot started?
Yes. Did you do well? How did you get out and reach the people? And did you take the route of forming a 501c3 nonprofit or not?
I'll start with the last part first. And yes, we did take the 501c3 direction because it was clear that we wanted to have community financial support, for putting on sustainability fairs and the summer, winter, fall, and spring schools that we have for community education on different issues around sustainability. But also, if we put in our own money, for different things, which we sometimes did. If we wanted donations, that sort of thing like that, it's legally, it's a very good way to make sure you have your rear ends covered.
Definitely.
So that's the legal mumbo jumbo of that, and also we had to really define our mission statement and keep it broad enough, that we could include a wide range of activities that were still pertaining to sustainability. Some of that might have included things like doing design projects. For community building, or going and lecturing, at schools or with other sustainability groups around the sound, which we have done. But as to how we actually got started, we were myself and Vic Opperman, who's also a green architect, and Erica Jones, who works at the PATH organization in Ballard. The PATH is the Program for Appropriate Technology and Health. It's an international thing. We kept running into each other in the aftermath of the start of the Iraq War, and even before that. In fact, Vic was the person who single-handedly pulled 500 people together for a peace march on January 1st, 2003, before the war actually started in pouring rain. So anyway, we kept running into each other, and after we went to war, we realized several things were wrong. After February 15th, 2003, we had 30 million people around the world protesting against the war. We thought there was enough to stop any regime from going into Iraq in the first place, but we went ahead anyway. So that raised our suspicions, and we started digging around and found out about the neoconservatives, the Project for the New American Century, and the agenda that's behind the President Bush administration. So we should be done, even after Saddam Hussein had fallen. And when we didn't change course even after that, we really became suspicious and realized that there was something deeper running underneath all of this. Years after that, we started digging around and found out about climate change. I don't want to call it global warming anymore because that's too nice. This is climate shift, and we're at the end of a glacial period that lasts about 25,000 years, so it's a natural thing. But the wild card is the amount of carbon dioxide we have in our atmosphere.
Definitely, we've contributed.
So, that said, we have a concept of peak oil, and climate shift happening at the same time, combined with a potential economic crash that could come from either or both of those, or independently. So we said, well, for me, my world ended when I found out about peak oil. So I couldn't talk about it with anybody for 3 months. But then we had a meeting, to say, well, where can we take the peace movement that hadn't gone before, and we discussed the peak oil thing, and realized, this is much deeper than we thought. So that was it was at that point we decided we would set up a nonprofit called Sustainable Ballot and start talking to people about the bigger issues of sustainability, surrounded by energy consumption and our over-reliance on it in every sector of society.
Now, to me, it sounds like the sustainability movement, which I like to call it a movement because it is vastly growing and expanding, and that's very encouraging. And I'll mention a book that people might look at, Paul Hawkins' book, Blessed Unrest. He started documenting the thousands at first grassroots, community, sustainable groups, and now they're in the millions, and that's amazing. That's just amazing. Yes. And it's like you said, within the 4 years, you've seen, more than 40, local groups.
Yes.
I wanted to toss out this idea, too, that you talked about what didn't work in the past as far as activism. And Neva, maybe address, do you believe that we're moving towards what I see now as it's more of a sacred activism. It's a peaceful approach. It's a solutions-oriented. We can point the fingers all day, and it's not going to do any good, right? Yeah. So can you address that issue as to how people can still feel involved, but in this different way?
Well, I can try. I mean, certainly, I would not characterize sustainable Bainbridge as sacred activism per se, although, again, on the individual level, people come to it and bring what they bring. They bring their whole belief system and their values to the table, and may certainly be coming from, that sort of very deep, integral place. That's what motivates them in the first place. So it's kind of a big question in terms of the movement. Certainly for Sustainable Bainbridge, we're not political at all. It certainly is a secular group in that way. But I think, Brenda, what you're getting to in general, in terms of a sustainability movement, certainly it does come from that deep place in people who understand that there's no separation between the living systems of the earth and human beings, and that we're all in this together, and that certainly is a very sacred place to stand.
I like that. That's sort of that unity movement too. And I'll ask David, on the basis of kind of looking at that and our interconnectedness. Neither one of your groups is political, and yet you do want to affect change, correct?
Yes, it would be a little bit incorrect to say that we are not political. We realize that being out in the streets and protesting all the time was being engaged in some sense of pantomime theater, where the captive audience is then interacting with the people on the stage, while something else is being done behind our backs. And it was this that we began to see, and that's why we got off the bandwagon and actually started doing something about building a sense of community. That by itself is probably the most political thing you could do, which is in itself an act. But in the sense of being apolitical, it means that we can't endorse particular candidates for offices, but we can lobby. We can. I would say we can advocate, for a shift in policy within the local government, for making our communities more bicycle friendly, reducing our carbon footprint, for helping companies to do the same thing, encouraging interaction between businesses and that sort of thing. But as far as that's about the extent that you can go with it. And again, it goes back to your mission statement. You have to make sure it's fairly broad, but also look at the rule of the 501c3 regulations and make sure you abide by those, because there are some lines you can cross.
Now, it sounds like, too, that there's some pretty same ingredients of forming sustainable groups and a movement towards eating more locally, organic, encouraging the organic farmers, the local farmers, so that they can help sustain a community with the food,
yes,
and to have more green building going on, as well as, I believe, too, there's a movement, especially in these cities, to protect some of the natural areas, what few there are left, which is sort of the rights of nature. And I've recently run into a developer that went in and just wiped out very natural little wetlands in the development of a community and merely paid a fine. Now, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think groups in the neighborhood should, is there a way then that neighbors can get together and can help change the legislature or do the local politics? And I guess it has to be at the local level to do something of that nature.
Yeah.
Well, sure, and that happens all the time. Especially with the whole, we talk about neighbors, there is that, the not in my backyard, so you may get people who maybe, haven't had a larger vision, but when something starts to happen close to them, that then it raises their awareness, they do get involved, generally speaking. That is the grassroots. There are people here who are, working locally with our city government all the time under the Sustainable Bainbridge umbrella. We have, for example, we have a green building action committee, and they've been working to write recommendations for a green building policy for the city of Bainbridge Island, which we don't have yet. So in that sense, and that is several members of the community who have come together because they heard, that this effort was happening.
That's true.
So.
There's also, I also remember reading recently that there's an effort, by some people on Vashon Island who are trying to protect some wetlands where a road right-of-way is slated to go through, so they've actually been going out and they're basically setting up a little picnic area and community play space, a meeting spot, right inside the right-of-way, and putting up a little pagoda or some kind of a what do you call it, gazebo or something like that. And this was done before they actually came up with the no traffic signs. So the city actually, I'm not sure exactly how the story goes, but the city kind of they got the signs together, and afterwards, kind of after the fact. But City Repair, based in Portland and in Seattle, also have organized community activities where they begin to get together and with art, design, and community interaction, sacrify intersections, parks, and stretches of streets, and just make them more disarming and enjoyable for the general public.
I've seen that is an amazing meeting place once that happens. You see all age groups, kind of hanging out and talking, and that's very encouraging.
That's true, and it's really, it's not so much, that we in the sustainability movement are trying to attack the government. And what we're really emphasizing is changing the way that we personally think about ourselves, our environment, and each other, and our buying and transportation habits. Also, just our whole spiritual approach, to how we actually view and interact with our world and ourselves. So that's the most profound paradigm shift that can happen. It's inside yourself first, then it's outside in the community. And what we're seeing in the Green Building Council and the LEED certification, leadership in environmental and energy design buildings, we're seeing local and state governments, and to many extents national governments worldwide, responding to a desire for people to say, we want a better world, we deserve a better world, and we want a design solution to actually begin to mirror that kind of thing. And as an urban designer, I'm very interested in that, in how the design of a community can actually begin to reflect those deep values, which basically are birthrights.
There's some incentives now being offered too, that will help companies come the distance too. I know that I personally got involved in talking about the sick office syndrome because of a whole renovation of a building that brought in the paints that had the VOCs and the off-gassing of formaldehyde from the new carpet and the new panels that were put up, and a great many people, I would say at least 30 people, were pretty seriously ill for months. I mean, not just, it didn't go away in a short period of time. That heightened my awareness. And I guess, companies need to know this. They need to know that they can affect the lives of their employees. And we felt helpless, aside from quitting our jobs and trying to find a better office environment. Because once it happened, it was going to be months, literally months, before, there was going to be the lessening of sensitivity of these, off-gassing. And so...
That's true.
How do you try to work maybe with the companies for better employee rights? And, if that came up, if there was a company that totally redid their building in Ballard or Bainbridge, and everybody started getting sick. Yeah, I mean, really, would you be a group that they could come to for assistance to... Neva, I'll put you on the hot seat here.
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest and say I don't know, other than what we can do and what we're trying to do is, create, a really strong base of quote-unquote membership. I should say active membership, because to us, really, if you're a resident of Bainbridge Island, you're a member of Sustainable Bainbridge. But in terms of active, membership, we're really trying to build that base so that, if there does need to be some kind of mobilization effort, if there is something that's happening that really requires a lot of people to know and act, Now we have our e-newsletter. We have our, Sustainable First Mondays. We have our website where people can call. So, we have ways of, reaching out quickly to larger and larger groups of people, which is going to help any kind of mobilization effort. But it's ultimately going to be up to the people themselves in terms of deciding what it is that they want to do. I mean, this is the thing that we find over and over in Sustainable Bainbridge, is that even as an organization, things are still not going to be top down. I mean, this whole thing of a partnership or a we or a non-hierarchical paradigm, has to happen at the organizational level too, not just at the big level of civilization. It has to happen in organizations. So we're not there as an organization dictating how things are going to be done. We're just providing sort of spaces and places and ways and means and opportunities for people to basically step up to leadership positions, whatever that looks like.
That's true.
Well, it could look like, too, the fact that within your community you have certain attorneys that might offer assistance to people, for their employee rights or whatever. Because once you know who's in your community, then you begin to know the expertise available, whether
exactly.
it's gardeners or architects.
Exactly. And to that end, I will say that, one of our major projects right now with Sustainable Bainbridge is that we are working on an asset mapping process, and we're actually doing that with students at Bainbridge Graduate Institute, which is here, obviously, on Bainbridge. They have a master's in sustainable business. And so we made a proposal to them for one of their action learning projects. They took it on, and it's very exciting. And really, the first thing that we're going to be collecting data around is really more of a community inventory, is to really figure out what is the social capital here in the community, who is already doing what, who can offer this, who has this expertise, so that we can start really doing that networking and collaborating, successfully. Because if we don't already know what's out there and who's doing what and where the gaps are, and if we're not building relationships, then that whole collaboration process is going to be a lot more difficult. And it is certainly one of the trends, I think, in a lot of activism, not just in the sustainability movement, but I think we're starting to get that we can't really work in silos anymore, that it's really about strength in numbers, and we're all starting to realize that.
Well, I'll let David continue on that note, too.
Yes. Let's see. Organizationally, we don't have one person saying what needs to be done to make the movement, make our organization move. It's very much a consensus-based decision-making process, and it's inclusionary by its very own structure. When we got founded, we looked at all the different areas in our society that would be affected by energy shortages or by water or by inference impact. What kind of food can we grow or ship in, and we realized very quickly, that we need to be able to have some kind of some system in place, if not an actual structural project that's in the ground, then a conversational ability to know how to talk to each other when the time does come that we need to have something happening. So we started looking at all the different factors affected in our society by a loss of petroleum, for example, and broke down groupings of activities, into bite-sized chunks that people can understand easily. For example, energy would affect transportation, which also affects agriculture, growing food, and distribution. So that became one category. Another area became water, water capture, distribution, purification. That became part of the Environment Guild and wastewater management, and so on. You have the Environment Guild. So we identified these areas as guilds based on the medieval craft skills, so they could actually become schools of learning. So that somebody with some deep knowledge in one area can hold classes, or several people can hold classes and teach others about the importance of, say, the role of medicinal foods in our diet. Whether we can actually grow these inside our cities, in our neighborhood blocks and that sort of thing. We could begin to do something like that.
That's a beautiful the medieval guild, and the return to apprenticeship and allowing even very young people to start learning at an early age where their interests lie.
Right.
You know, whether they want to build things or they want to grow things or they want to help heal.
That's, again, that's a consent.
Wonderful.
That's again, that's an inclusionary and consensual process that we envisioned. And one of the benefits of having the guild system that we set it up the way it is that people with specific skills, expertise, or even just plain passion can choose one or two of those directions that they'd like to put their energy into it and get involved. And we're always, having new members come and join and join the different guilds. And the other thing too is that some guilds will actually be more active than others. And throughout so far, the food, health, and medicine guild has been, and sustainable ballards has been one of the most active, because people have a big emphasis on food and the appreciation of food and the role of medicinal plants and herbs. So that's been pretty popular, as you can see by the 100-mile diet feast that we put on now, probably going into its third year, to reflect the role of how much energy we can save by having food come from within just 100 miles of Seattle.
Oh, definitely. A lot of food travels 1,500 miles at the minimum sometimes to get to it, which is just ridiculous. Neva, you're on an island. I imagine that most of the island, people Whidbey Island and other islands and that actually may have to rely more on the ferry system and all, has more driven kind of focus on sustainability in the event that they're cut off from the mainland. So
don't forget sail transport. You can do this too.
It is interesting. I mean, it certainly is an issue. And one of our more active groups, we don't call them guilds, we call them action committees, but it's the same essential idea. But that's a very active group, really looking at how much farmland is on the island, how many farmers there are, how many people growing gardens, growing food in their gardens. So we're really, beginning to look at the whole food issue and what's here. I would not say that the work we're doing is, at this point, hardcore emergency management, contingency kind of stuff when everything breaks loose. We're not really working from that platform so much. I mean, certainly citywide, they've recently hired someone to work on emergency management, and that's really key. And I know with some sustainability groups, they actually start with emergency management because it's the kind of thing that brings all kinds of people together. It's just like, it's not like it's the war where you have some people who are for it and some people who are against it. It's like emergency management. We live in an earthquake area.
Absolutely, it's
just
happen. So, it's a reality.
Exactly. So that is as a way to bring people in, I know has been very successful for a lot of different sustainability groups. So certainly we're working on that stuff. But boy, that's a big nut to crack. I can tell you that.
Right. When you
could
become isolated, really, from a landmass standpoint.
Yeah, well, the bridge would have to come down. I mean, we do have a bridge that goes to Kitsap County, but...
Oh, but you know how bad traffic is in any kind of emergency on any bridges. Oh, my gosh,
yeah.
That might actually be kind of nice to have sustainable, have Bainbridge Island, a very peaceful place. But Neva, you're hinting at something that's really been important, and I would like for you to chime in on this, and that is the policies that we've seen nationally, especially at the federal and down to the state level, have been messages of fear, messages of lack of confidence, and basically messages that say that we as communities must rely on a federal level or something like that. So there's been a kind of an abdication of responsibility and cohesion for the rest of the country at the state, sometimes on the state, and definitely on the national level. So people have been experiencing a lot of fear-mongering from that direction. I think Neva, I think you would agree with me on this, and that is that people have been coming to the sustainability groups like Sustainable Ballard because we're offering a message of hope. We're offering a message of saying, well, Yeah, things could be worse, but we want to develop something that we can work with together, and it's also about having fun. It's about making sustainability look attractive, to finding some new freedom, finding new connections, finding new ways of, actually getting what you need from inside your community. So really, overall, it's a message of hope rather than survivalism. Survivalism is based on a message of fear, and we're not about fear.
Yeah. The thing that I always say about sustainability work is that at the core it's about relationship building, because if we know each other, then we learn to care about each other.
That's right.
And if we care about each other and bad things do happen, we're going to be watching each other's backs, and so that's really important. I mean, of course, relationship building can go much further than that too, and back to that, strength in numbers. So if, I find many other people who care about the same thing I care about, okay, now we can start changing policy in the city. Now we can start putting pressure, maybe where pressure needs to be put. But to me, the whole thing at the core is about relationship building, and maybe that is, the sacred activism piece of it.
I like that. The one thing I did a few years back in Mountain Lake Terrace was just put out a bunch of flyers and host a block party in the summertime barbecue. Say everybody bring a dish and show up in this cul-de-sac area where we could kind of, have some privacy and get together. And it was amazing to just have a chance to meet some of the people that you see coming and going every morning and evening, to and from work, and get to know who they are and see, well, gee, there was a doctor in our neighborhood, and there's a couple teachers, and there's a marathon runner, and there's and there's a gardener, and the awareness really helped to build a relationship once we came face to face and actually started talking to each other. And that was just in one little cul-de-sac area, maybe 6 families. So
yes.
I could see how that can really help if we can expand it out beyond 6 families.
Well, in fact, I know in Ballard that has actually happened in a few places. All these gardens that we have all over Seattle, these guerrilla gardens, if you will, between the curb and the sidewalks, where people are growing their own food, and even growing so much they can't, consume it by themselves as a family. They share it with the neighbors, and also as a crime prevention planner, I'm very interested in the thing, because it means that you're taking ownership of your entire street, from your front door to the curb. And saying, I'm occupying the space, and so it means that there's somebody else who is there who cares. And the other thing, too, is that as a designer, it interests me, too, because it just shows how much land is wasted, for the production of food, even within our cities. It's by the fact that we have abandoned so much land, to the dominance of the automobile. I really think people should watch the movie called The Power of Community, How Cuba Survived Peak Oil, put out by the Community Solution in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And basically it's a documentary on what happened to Cuba with the fall of the Soviet Empire, and how they realized that if they didn't have food in their communities to feed them from within, added to that, the embargo by the United States on medical supplies and other resources, they wouldn't be able to do anything. So what they've done now, as of this date, is they've turned the diet around completely to almost, I don't know how what the percentage is, but it's almost all of their food is grown organically, with a complete restructuring of how farms are run on a massive scale. But imagine, Havana City, the capital of Cuba, now has 90% of the food grown for all of its residents within the city limits. Only 10% come from outside the city, and this is a magnificent accomplishment. Right. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about people growing food in every available piece of land, including on the rooftops of buildings. There's no reason why we couldn't do that here.
Definitely. What do you think? I know that Neva, you're in an area that has much more rural capacity for expanding and growing a lot more food. The cities, I think, and especially these apartment dwellers, that are, have noticed that and wondered too about, hanging baskets off of your deck even. You can get quite a bit of stuff growing.
Oh, sure.
You actually can.
Yeah,
it's
you
true.
can do composting in barrels too for the same thing.
Oh yeah, urban agriculture is just in its infancy. It's going to be exciting to watch that grow. But of course we're not really rural here on Bainbridge. We're certainly not urban, but farmland here is it's we don't have a lot of it, and so it really is an issue here. And one of the things that's happening on Bainbridge is that recently there's been a Bainbridge Island Permaculture Guild that has started, and that's not a quote-unquote official project of Sustainable Bainbridge, but it's certainly something we support in our newsletter, and and there'll be some crossover with our food mapping that we're doing. But to me, that is such an important thing for people to start learning and thinking about. The truth of the matter is if we have to grow food, you can't just do it in a quick, short amount of time. So having knowledge and trying to make the places and the spaces and building the skill toward that, I think is a really good idea.
No, it definitely is. And when I've been in an apartment dweller and had, my little patio, a little 4x6 space just packed with tiers of strawberries and some of my favorite herbs, and I've even tried a little bit of hydroponics, but it can be done, but it really does require some expertise. I love the guild idea of where once you get to know who are the experts and who are the master gardeners around, and the medicinal and the edible wild plants even that are available. That is such a benefit.
This is where community steps in. And this is where you actually have to take the initiative to step out and get to know your neighbors. I know that in Ballard, up near Dibble Street, north of 75th Street Northwest, I ran across a woman who was rototilling as it stripped between the curb and the sidewalk, and noticed that almost the entire block had that strip tilled up. Mm-hmm. And I said, "What's going on here?" And she said, "Well, we all know each other up and down this block here, and we've decided what we're going to do is grow food up and down this stretch here, so we've agreed that that's what we're going to do." In suburban situations, very, very suburban situations, there's no reason why people couldn't actually get to know each other better and disappear the backyard fences and mm-hmm. use the space between the houses for growing food. You could actually imagine you could actually have that turn into like a village commons over time if the conditions were right. But things like that were done during World War II, and there was a shortage of food, there was a shortage of materials, for the war, but also that people needed to have resources for each other. It's that kind of community interaction we'd like to see happen again. But there are, like I said earlier, that there are laws and actions, laws being enacted that actually are designed to force us apart from each other. For example, there are laws that are being sneaked into state legislatures at the behest of corporations like Monsanto and DuPont, that take away local control of local seed stocks, so that you can't just go ahead and do grow some heirloom seeds or apples or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what all is happening with that, but states like Idaho, maybe Missouri, a bunch of other states have passed these things under the radar. Most people really don't even know about it. And we don't know that. We don't have anything passed like that in California, Washington, or Oregon yet. But this is really insidious. But that is precisely what happened in Iraq. When Vice Consul Paul Bremer was there, he passed a draconian law making it illegal for Iraqi farmers to use seeds that have been modified and worked with for thousands of years for their own agricultural systems, designed specifically to deal with their environment and make it so that they had to buy almost exclusively from American suppliers like DuPont and Monsanto. This is quite insidious. I urge people to watch the movie The Future of Food to understand what kind of forces we're dealing with. So this is where sustainability really steps into the breach. We're saying we want to have local control and community autonomy to be able to make some decisions that are healthy for everyone.
Now, what would you say to Neva, as far as when issues come up, how would your group then maybe move forward to write your congressman, right? Is that something that you encourage or what?
At this point, there are no actions that we've taken specifically that ask people to take a political action per se. That just has not come up for us. We're working on asset mapping. We're working on understanding our food, farming, agriculture, scenario here on Bainbridge. We've been working with energy and trying to help people reduce their carbon footprint. I think I mentioned the Green Building Committee is working on recommendations that we hope will, push through City Council in 2008. And again, I mean, that is one area where we might be, saying to people, please write letters. Here's a vote coming up. Here's a policy that's been written. Please make your voice heard. There's a bag reduction campaign that we're working on. And of course, we do events, all kinds of educational events, sort of workshop type things. And one of our newest projects is we're basically going to create a montage of video clips of people's sustainability stories.
Oh,
because,
great.
Again,
no, that's a good, that's
we believe
idea.
that the answer is already embedded in our community with the creativity and the innovation of people who are, doing things all the time. And so as a way to really increase awareness and just create that kind of, inspiration and sort of incite action.
Well, go ahead and, send that email off to your congressman, and at the same time, if you're growing fruits and vegetables, save the seeds and start harvesting seeds and taking better care of what's stewardship of those plants then, right? And
it's
so you can share them, isn't it? I think I love that word, and once again, we're kind of looking back in time. You're looking at the more medieval look at villages and sustaining each other and working together with these guilds, and stewardship, I think, is an old word with a new, fresh idea coupled with sustainability.
Well, there are models of education out there in which the brilliance or intelligence of the youth is not dependent on your achieving a degree or having the formal schooling that we're talking about here. There are people who have university down in South America where the youth are actually learning about the real skills of farming, about woodworking, about repairing machines, about having real life experiences that are directly applicable to the contributions they can make as a society. But it's also structured in such a way that students actually begin to learn more by doing than being taught. So that's part of what the guilds things can do. And we really would like to see more on Sustainable Ballot and other organizations like Sustainable West Seattle, which is a new kid on the block here with 200 members on the email list. They have very similar goals to ours, and they're starting with 200 people on the list now, and they're going to go to like 400 in a very short time. The membership has just been meteoric. But we would like to see much more involvement in the youth, from our youth, in developing maybe even youth guilds, and interacting with adults in our community. We have a society, where children don't know how to interact with adults on a comfortable basis, and coming from a co-housing community and raising my kids in that, I can see the direct impact of how children get to know adults on a first-name basis, and they feel very comfortable doing so. But at the same time, you can have older people who can become mentors, to our children, and that's something we really have lacking in our society as a whole. So the sustainability movement needs to be able to address some of that as well.
Oh, I think the whole concept of elders is an amazing resource that we're neglecting in our Western world over here. A lot of other countries and the third world countries seem to appreciate the generations more. And yes, the children are raised by more adults than just their parents at some of those countries, and we should pay attention to that too.
Yeah, the educational program in Cuba actually includes mandatory classes, I think, on woodworking, on agricultural systems, on the practical applications of what needs to be used, of what helps us really get by. Because if I tell you, if peak oil really does happen soon, your lawyer is going to be worth less than the farmer who can grow the food that you can actually eat.
Well,
so that's happening right now in Cuba.
I've heard too that perhaps the next war won't be fought over oil, but over water, which is something we're paying attention to in the sustainability. Neva, as we kind of start to head into the downside of closing up, I'd like for you to maybe just toss out a couple ideas that an individual might want to start, since you're a co-founder. over there as far as encouragement or inspiration,
Sure.
and your contact information.
Sure. Well, the thing that I really want to plug here, is Scallops, which is sustainable communities all over Puget Sound. And you can find information on the website if you just go to scallops.sustainableballard.org. Sustainable Ballard put a page or two up for us. We're really just in the beginning stages of bringing the existing groups together for this, really important, networking and information sharing and inspiring one another and supporting one another in this work. And so it's representatives from many different groups all over Puget Sound. I mean, I think our total number now is somewhere between 35 and 40. And we're really trying to make that a solid organizational effort so people can come for support. And just by virtue of Scallops starting, for example, I got an email the other day from someone from Redmond. They want to start Sustainable Redmond. And so, they want to come to our next Scallops meeting, which is in January. So, we have a lot of opportunity just by virtue of there being a Scallops to help people if they want to plug in, which I think is the most important thing. Plug in. And then after that, it's, everyone's going to start at a different place. But the most important thing I think you can do is find your group. And if there isn't a group, start one. And there's a lot of support to do that. So my contact information can be found on scallops.sustainableballard.org.
Oh, thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much. I'm going to slip out.
Yes, and
thank you, Neva. It's
Really
good to hear you
appreciate it.
again.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, David, as we wrap up with some few comments on Sustainable Ballard in particular, but now with this broader group, Scallops organization, I'd like for you to say, you made a really good point about educating our youth and getting our children involved. Do you actually have a chance to maybe to go to the elementary and junior high and high schools and talk about how they might want to form a group? I know that I'm aware of elementary school that was able to recover pieces of a greenhouse that was sort of being just dismantled and refurbished it, and now grow a lot of their own luncheon salads and things, and so just little things like that can be done, and the kids are loving it. Half of them never grew anything, so they're thrilled.
This is where garlic come from?
Yes, exactly right.
That's exactly the kind of thing that we need to see happening much more on a grander scale. Another thing that's happening is that we have community-supported agricultural organizations actually going to hospitals and saying, hey, we need to improve the food that we're giving our patients, and we can deliver that from within the Puget Sound region. You don't have to have it processed and sent to you from someplace else. And for our sustainability fairs, which happen around the end of September, early October every year, we've been having our students from Ballard High School come down and actually show people how they can make their own biodiesel. For cars, for example, and they come in all kind of funny little costumes, or even, just as they are, and set up blenders, in different stages of oil purification from restaurants, and Vietnamese restaurants and donut shops, and turn that into a viable, biodiesel fuel. I myself I've gone to Summit High School with Marty Brennan from the Restore in Ballard, and collaborated with muralists, from San Francisco to create a mural about sustainability visions with students of Summit High School, and you can see that mural on the front of the store now. And definitely for other groups who want to get started, or who already have started somewhat but having some difficulty hammering out what the agenda might be, for their future direction. People from within Sustainable Ballard and others who have had experience in forging this path, can be available to come out and talk and meet with them, and just foster that sense of community. So we've done that. I've gone and spoken to the Lake Forest group, of which Miriam Doyle is a member, and up to Port Townsend, it's Jefferson 2020, and the others up there. So this is really about cross-pollination and supporting each other. That's what we're all about.
That's what I appreciate too, the fact that you're so willing to share, how you've grown with others so that you can help them probably achieve that much faster by doing that.
That's right. No need to reinvent the wheel. We can do it together.
Exactly. We're tired of reinventing the wheel. And, one of the things that I saw a local high school group do was to really bring home the whole idea of recycling, reusing, and re-gifting. Here we're, looking at the holidays and going out and spending and new, got to have and throw out, instead of reusing. And so they did an art project with recycled, reusing things, and then bringing, and sort of refurbishing old gifts, re-gifting.
Right.
What a concept, it was wonderful.
It's great. Yeah,
And I think the kids, really given an opportunity, they're willing to look at things differently.
Oh yeah, we really need teachers, to step up to the plate and say we want to teach our kids something different than what's being taught in the main school curriculum, and maybe make it more hands-on in some way. I'm not being an educator. That's not my expertise. But I can't tell you how important it is to have kids who graduate from high school or even from middle schools and that sort of thing. There's something that they can say, hey, I can make something with my hands that's going to be useful, to society, and it's not just a degree.
It's therapeutic too.
It's very therapeutic.
Gardening is therapeutic,
yes.
Always has been. Is just one of the things that a lot of doctors prescribe for their mental patients. So, go garden. You'll be more sane.
Yeah. We've actually had a match. What is it called? A gardening match-up program, and Sustainable Ballard for a little while, where we had people, write down their skills and tools and what they had, and if they have any land, but they have no time, to garden, they could probably match up with somebody else who does have the time.
What
or
a great idea!
If you don't have the tools,
right.
You can find somebody who does. So there's always possibilities like that, and that can happen independent of whether you're a member of Sustainable Ballard or any of the other sustainable communities in Puget Sound. Just take the initiative and do it.
Well, and I think that's, you mentioned Miriam, who's been thinking about, seeing a group started locally, and I guess, just with neighbors, just persistence pays off, I would imagine, after a point. And probably, like you said, plan something that's fun.
Yes.
That's always a great thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's really about changing the way you see yourself and the way you see other people. You're not taking anything for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Becoming those caretakers of this planet again, and
that's what we're here for.
Right, and as we go through our life phases, I'm looking at my grandchildren and hoping that 30, 50 years from now, it will be a cleaner, even safer planet, because in some way, some small way, I can contribute to that, even by spreading education and information. So we'll all do that we can. David, thank you.
Very welcome.
For coming from Sustainable Ballard, which you want to give us your contact information as well.
Yes, I'm not working in Sustainable Ballard anymore as a vice president, but you can find us at www.sustainableballard.org. I am David at sustainableballard.org. You can get a hold of us through the Scallops Network with Vic Hopperman at vic@sustainableballard.org, or contact anybody else at info at sustainableballard.org. We have meetings, as many of these groups have. We personally have meetings every fourth Monday of the month at the Sunset Hill Community Association basement, and we always end up having like half the people who show up who are hardcore members of Sustainable Ballard, and new members who then go out to tell other people about what we're up to. So it's growing. I don't know how many people we have on our email list, but we started out with 150. Last I heard, we were past 500.
Oh, that's amazing. Use of the internet is wonderful. I will admit that too. And thank you once again for sharing your time and your energy, your efforts, and growing, the sustainable, the whole idea, as well as the actions that it's taking. This is Journey with Brenda Roberts, and this interview will be available on my website, which is journeywithbrendaroberts.org. So if you'd like to share it, feel free to, as well as contact those individuals. Neva on Bainbridge Island, Scallops is probably one of the best ways, which is easy to remember here in the Puget Sound. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and may your journey be one of sustaining yourself in a peaceful and wonderful way.